The great crystal throne of Emperor Vex gleamed under the artificial suns of the imperial palace. Around him, the War Council sat in tense silence. Holographic displays showed the grim reality red markers indicated enemy fleets advancing on 3 fronts, while their own blue markers grew fewer each day. "Your Majesty," General Crix spoke with barely controlled panic, "the rebels have taken the outer rim. They control 60% of our shipping lanes. At this rate, we have maybe 2 months before they reach the core worlds." Emperor Vex, eh? Tall figure with pale blue skin and 4 arms, drummed his fingers on the throne's armrest. His empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. The Galactic Federation had been the greatest civilization ever known, spanning 12 spiral arms and commanding the loyalty of over 400 species. Now it was crumbling. "What of our reserve fleets?" the Emperor asked. "Destroyed at the Battle of Sigma 7, Admiral Nex replied grimly. "The rebels somehow got hold of our battle plans. They knew exactly where to strike." The Emperor's third eye, located in the center of his forehead, glowed with frustration. Traitors within his own ranks. The revolution had started small. Few mining worlds demanding better conditions. But it had spread like wildfire, planet by planet, system by system. "We need ships," General Crix continued. "Any ships. Merchant vessels, cargo haulers, even pleasure craft. We must conscript everything that can mount a weapon and has a hyperdrive." Emperor Vex nodded slowly. It was a desperate plan, but desperate. Times called for desperate measures. Send the order. Every ship in the Empire is now property of the Imperial Navy. Any ship will do. The order went out across subspace channels, transmitted to every world still loyal to the Federation. Ship registries were seized. Civilian vessels were boarded and converted. Luxury yachts had laser cannons welded to their hulls. Mining barges were fitted with torpedo tubes, but it was not enough. The rebels had superior numbers, and more importantly, superior morale. They fought for freedom while the Imperial forces fought for duty. 3 weeks later, as reports of more losses reached the throne room, a communications officer approached nervously. "Your Majesty," she said, "we're receiving a response to the conscription order. It's unusual." "Show me," the Emperor commanded. The main holographic display flickered to life, showing a grainy transmission. The figure on screen was bipedal, roughly average height, with strange pale skin and only 2 eyes. The creature wore what appeared to be a simple military uniform. "This is Captain Jack Barnes of the Earth vessel Millennium Draken," the figure said in accented galactic standard. "We received your conscription notice. We're a long way from home, but we're willing to help. 1 ship, crew of 8. We're en route to your coordinates." The transmission ended. The War Council stared in confusion. "What system is Earth?" General Crix asked, consulting his star charts. "I've never heard of it." "It's in the outer spiral arm," Admiral Nex replied after, checking her database. "Sector 7G, primitive world. They only achieved spaceflight about 200 years ago. Single species, bipedal mammals called ... humans." Emperor Vex's expression was unreadable. 1 ship? 8 crew members? This is what responds to our call for aid? "Your Majesty," General Crix said carefully, "perhaps we should decline their offer. A primitive vessel would be more liability than asset. Our enemies would destroy them in seconds." The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. Through the great windows of the throne room, he could see the capital city stretching to the horizon. Millions of beings who depended on him for protection. Children playing in parks who might soon face slavery under rebel rule. "No," he said finally, "I gave my word. Any ship will do. Let them come." Admiral Nex frowned. "But Your Majesty, what could 1 primitive ship possibly accomplish?" Our own advanced vessels are being destroyed by the dozen. The Emperor's third eye dimmed as he contemplated the desperate situation. Perhaps nothing, Admiral. But we are. Not in a position to refuse any help, no matter how small. He paused, then added with grim humor, "Besides, what's the worst that could happen? We lose one more ship?" None of them could have imagined how wrong that assumption would be got as the council dispersed to continue their war preparations. None noticed the small alert that appeared on the sensor technician's console. Unknown vessel detected at system boundary. Configuration ... unusual. Speed ... impossible. The Millennium Draken was coming. 3 days later, the Millennium Draken dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Imperial home system. The sensor technician who first detected it nearly fell from her chair. "Admiral Nex," she called out, voice trembling. "You need to see this." Admiral Nex hurried to the sensor station in the command center. What she saw made no sense. The human vessel was small, barely 300 meters long, but the readings were impossible. "These energy signatures," she muttered, studying the data. "The power output is off the charts. And look at this hull composition." The ship appeared to be made of some unknown metal that absorbed sensor scans. Its design was unlike anything in the Imperial database Angular, aggressive with strange protrusions that could be weapons or engines or something else entirely. How fast did they travel here? Admiral Nex asked. The technician checked her calculations twice before answering. According to the hyperspace wake, they covered 47,000 light-years in 3 days. That was impossible. The fastest Imperial ships could manage maybe 10,000 light-years in the same time. Admiral Nex ordered an immediate scan of the vessel's approach vector. "Send them standard greeting protocols," she commanded, "and prepare an escort. I want to know what we're dealing with." The response came immediately. Captain Barnes' face appeared on the main screen, but this time the image was crystal clear. Behind him, the bridge of the Millennium Draken was visible clean, efficient, with technology that looked both primitive and advanced at the same time. "Admiral Nex," Captain Barnes said with a slight smile. "Permission to approach your station?" "Granted." "Captain Barnes, please follow our escort ships to Docking Bay 7. As the human vessel approached the massive Imperial space station, crowds gathered at the observation decks. Word had spread quickly about the strange ship from the outer rim. Some came out of curiosity, others out of desperation, hoping that any reinforcement, no matter how small, might help their cause. The Millennium Draken settled into the docking bay with surprising grace. Its landing systems appeared different from standard designs, using some form of energy field rather than mechanical supports. The airlock cycled, and Emperor Vex himself arrived to greet these mysterious allies. What stepped out of the ship surprised everyone. Captain Jack Barnes was exactly as he had appeared in the transmission average height, bipedal, with only 2 eyes and strange pale skin. But there was something about the way he carried himself that commanded respect. His 7 crew members followed behind him, each looking alert and professional despite their odd appearance. "Your Imperial Majesty," Captain Barnes said, offering what appeared to be a human salute. "Captain Jack Barnes, Earth Defense Force. We came as soon as we received your message." Emperor Vex studied the humans with his third eye. Despite their primitive appearance, there was something about them that felt ... not threatening, exactly, but like coiled springs ready to release tremendous energy. "Captain Barnes," the Emperor replied formally, "we are grateful for your response, though I must ask, how did you travel here so quickly?" "Our records indicate Earth is 47,000 light-years away. New drive system," Barnes replied simply. "Still working out the bugs, but it gets us where we need to go." Admiral Nex stepped forward. "Captain, I've reviewed our intelligence. On Earth, Your world has no significant military forces, no advanced weapons technology. What can one ship possibly do against the rebel fleets? Barnes exchanged glances with his crew. One of them, a woman with short dark hair, whispered something in his ear. He nodded. "Admiral," Barnes said, "we may not have big fleets, but humans have been fighting wars for a very long time. We've learned a few things about survival." General Crix, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "The rebel fleet will arrive in 6 weeks. They have over 2,000 ships, including 12 dreadnoughts. Each dreadnought carries enough firepower to destroy a moon." "Understood," Barnes replied without hesitation. "We'll need tactical data on their movements, defensive positions, and any intelligence on their command structure." The ease with which he accepted the impossible odds made everyone uncomfortable. Either these humans were incredibly brave, or incredibly stupid. Emperor Vex made a decision. "Captain Barnes, I'll give you access to everything we have. But I want you to understand, this is not your fight. Your world is far from here. You could leave now, and the rebels would never find Earth." Barnes was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was firm. "Your Majesty, when humans give their word, we keep it. We said we'd help, so we're here. Besides," he added with that slight smile, "running away isn't really our style." As the humans were escorted to temporary quarters, Admiral next turned to the Emperor. "Your Majesty, what have we gotten ourselves into?" Emperor Vex watched the humans disappear down the corridor. "I'm not sure, Admiral, but I have the strangest feeling that we're about to find out what happens when you corner the most dangerous predator in the galaxy." End of Part 2. Captain Barnes stood before the massive tactical display in the Imperial War Room. Holographic projections showed the current positions of both Imperial and Rebel forces across 3 sectors. The humans had been studying the data for 2 days, asking questions that made the Imperial officers increasingly uncomfortable. "Tell me about the rebel leadership," Barnes said to General Crix. "Supreme Commander Voss leads their forces." Crix replied, "Former Imperial Admiral. He knows all our tactics, our ship capabilities, our standard formations." "What about their supply lines?" "They control most of the major shipping routes. Their logistics are actually better than ours at this point." Barnes nodded, then pointed to a cluster of red markers. "This main fleet here, how do they communicate with their other forces?" Admiral Nex frowned. "Standard subspace relays, same as everyone uses." "Why do you ask?" Instead of answering, Barnes turned to one of his crew members, a tall man with graying hair. "Tom, what do you think?" Tom studied the display for a moment. "Classic hammer and anvil setup. They're planning to pin our forces between 2 fleets, while the third hits from behind. Textbook maneuver." "Agreed," Barnes said. "The question is, how do we turn their strength against them?" Emperor Vex, who had been observing silently, stepped forward. "Captain, I appreciate your analysis, but we've already considered every possible strategy. We're outnumbered 4 to 1. Our only hope is to make them pay dearly for their victory." Barnes looked at the Emperor with those strange 2 eyes. "Your Majesty, with respect, you're thinking like an empire. Big fleets, formal battles, honor and glory. That's not how humans fight wars." "Then how do humans fight wars?" General Crix asked. The woman with dark hair, whom Barnes had introduced as Lieutenant Davis, spoke up. "We cheat." The Imperial officers exchanged confused glances. Admiral Nex shook her head. "I don't understand." "There are rules of engagement, protocols." "Rules are for civilized species," Barnes interrupted. "When your survival is at stake, there are no rules. There's only winning and dying." He walked closer to the tactical display, his expression growing serious. "Your rebel commander knows Imperial tactics, because he used to be Imperial. But he doesn't know human tactics, because humans have never fought in your wars before. What are you suggesting? Emperor Vex asked. Give us 24 hours, Barnes said. Let us study your enemy's patterns, their communication frequencies, their supply schedules. Then we'll show you how 8 humans can destroy a fleet of 2,000 ships. The throne room erupted in murmurs of disbelief. General Crix laughed. Out loud. Captain Barnes, I admire your confidence, but that's impossible. 8 people cannot defeat 2,000 warships. Barnes' crew exchanged looks, and several of them smiled grimly. Lieutenant Davis stepped forward again. General, may I ask you something? In all your military experience, have you ever fought against a species that evolved as persistence hunters? Persistence hunters? Crix looked confused. Species that hunt by chasing their prey until it collapses from exhaustion. Earth has several examples. Humans are the most successful. Tom, the gray-haired crew member, added, We spent 2 million years learning to outthink, outlast, and outmaneuver creatures, bigger and stronger than us. We survived ice ages, plagues, asteroid impacts, and wars that consumed entire continents. Barnes nodded. Every other species in your galaxy became civilized and stopped evolving as warriors. Humans never stopped. We just got better at it. Emperor. Vex felt a chill run down his spine. What exactly are you planning to do? We're going to do what humans do best, Barnes replied. We're going to make them afraid. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of activity. The humans worked with minimal rest, studying every piece of intelligence the Empire had gathered. They analyzed communication patterns, supply routes, and fleet movements with an intensity that made the Imperial officers nervous. Captain, Barnes requested access to the Empire's intelligence network, communication systems, and manufacturing facilities. When asked why, he simply said, We need to build some things. On the second day, Lieutenant Davis approached Admiral Nex with a list of requirements that seemed completely random. Medical supplies, mining explosives, cargo containers, and communication equipment. What are you building? Nex asked. Doubt, Davis replied cryptically. Meanwhile, Tom had been working with the Empire's computer specialists, installing what he called human software into the communication networks. When asked what it did, he simply smiled and said, It learns. As reports came in of the rebel fleet's approach, now only 4 weeks away, Emperor Vex found himself wondering if he had made a terrible mistake. These humans were unlike any species he had ever encountered. They worked with a cold efficiency that suggested they had done this many times before. Admiral, he said quietly to Nex, I'm beginning to think we may have invited something into our empire that's more dangerous than the rebels. Admiral Nex watched Captain Barnes reviewing fleet positions with his crew. Your Majesty, I think that might be exactly what we need. 3 weeks before the rebel fleet's arrival, the first phase of the human plan began. It started with something so simple that the Imperial officers almost missed it entirely. Captain Barnes requested a meeting with the Empire's propaganda ministry. The department head, a nervous creature named Director Pike, was confused by the humans' interest in civilian communications. We need to send a message to every world in rebel territory, Barnes explained. Nothing threatening, just ... information. Message that went out across subspace channels seemed harmless enough. It was a standard Imperial news bulletin about increased security measures, new ship registrations, and routine military exercises. But buried within the text were subtle details about the Empire's new allies from the Outer Rim. Within days, rebel intelligence networks were buzzing with questions. Who were these mysterious allies? What kind of ships did they have? How many were there? Lieutenant Davis monitored the intercepted rebel communications with satisfaction. Fear of the unknown, she explained to Admiral Nex. The most powerful weapon in the galaxy. Meanwhile, Tom had been busy with the Empire's manufacturing facilities. He was building devices that looked like standard communication relays, but with modifications that no Imperial engineer understood. "What do they do?" General Crix asked. "They listen," Tom replied. "And when the time is right, they talk." The devices were secretly installed on cargo ships and trading vessels that regularly traveled through Rebel territory. To any scanner, they appeared to be normal equipment, but they were recording everything: fleet movements, communication frequencies, even casual conversations among Rebel crews. Captain Barnes spent his time studying the psychological profiles of Rebel commanders. He paid particular attention to Supreme Commander Voss, the former Imperial Admiral leading the rebellion. "He's proud," Barnes observed, "believes in honor, in fair fights, in proving his superiority through direct confrontation. That's his weakness." "How is honor a weakness?" Emperor Vex asked. "Because honorable people are predictable," Barnes replied. "They do what they think is right instead of what works." 2 weeks before the expected battle, the second phase began. Rebel scouts reported strange energy signatures in empty space signatures that appeared and disappeared without explanation. When they investigated, they found nothing but empty void, but the reports kept coming. Mysterious ships that vanished when approached. Energy readings that suggested massive fleets hiding just beyond sensor range. Distress calls from Imperial vessels that suddenly cut off, leaving no trace. Supreme Commander Voss, aboard his flagship, grew increasingly frustrated. His intelligence officers brought him report after report of these ghost contacts. "What are we dealing with?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir," his chief of staff replied nervously. "The energy signatures don't match anything in our database. They appear to be using some kind of stealth technology we've never seen before." What they didn't know was that Tom's hidden devices were creating false sensor readings, broadcasting fake energy signatures at precisely calculated intervals. The rebels were chasing shadows, wearing down their crews and wasting fuel on pointless searches. Meanwhile, the real human plan was taking shape in ways the Imperial forces were only beginning to understand. Captain Barnes had requested detailed information about Rebel supply schedules. Not their military supplies, but something far more important: food shipments. "An army marches on its stomach," he explained to General Crix. "Cut off their food, and you don't have to fight them at all." Using the intelligence gathered by Tom's listening devices, the humans identified every supply convoy heading to Rebel territory. But instead of attacking the convoys directly, they did something far more subtle. They hacked the shipping manifests. Small changes, barely noticeable. A food convoy destined for Sector 7 was rerouted to Sector 12. Medical supplies meant for the Rebel fleet were redirected to civilian colonies. Fuel shipments were delayed by bureaucratic errors. Within days, Rebel commanders were receiving reports of supply shortages. Crews were going hungry. Ships were running low on fuel. Medical supplies were mysteriously absent when wounded soldiers needed them. "It's sabotage," Supreme Commander Voss declared. "There are Imperial agents infiltrating our supply lines." The paranoia spread quickly. Rebel commanders began suspecting each other of treachery. Security checks doubled, then tripled. Supply officers were arrested on suspicion of collaboration with the Empire. The rebellion that had been united by common cause was now fragmenting due to fear and mistrust. Emperor Vex watched these reports with growing amazement. "Captain Barnes, you're destroying their fleet without firing a single shot." Barnes nodded grimly. "The battle is won before it begins if your enemy defeats himself. But this is just the beginning. When their fleet arrives next week, we'll show them what happens. When humans actually start fighting." Lieutenant Davis added with a cold smile, "They wanted a war. They're about to learn the difference between a civilized conflict and human warfare. As alarms began sounding throughout the Imperial station, indicating the approach of the rebel fleet, Admiral Nex realized something that made her both grateful and terrified. The humans hadn't come to help the Empire win a war. They had come to teach the galaxy what war really meant. The rebel fleet dropped out of hyperspace in a formation. That should have been terrifying. 2,000 warships arranged in perfect attack patterns, with Supreme Commander Voss's flagship at the center like a dark star, surrounded by instruments of destruction. But something was wrong. Instead of the confident, unified force he had expected. To command, Voss found himself leading a fleet consumed by suspicion and fear. His captains questioned every order. Supply shortages had forced him to reduce his attack formations. Worst of all, his scouts reported impossible readings, massive fleets of unknown ships lurking just beyond sensor range. Emperor Vex stood on the bridge of the Imperial Command Station, watching the approaching enemy with surprising calm. Beside him, Captain Barnes studied the tactical displays with the focused intensity of a predator sizing up prey. "They're already beaten," Barnes observed quietly. "They just don't know it yet." "How can you be certain?" Admiral Nex asked. "Because they're still thinking like an empire," Barnes replied. "Big ships, direct confrontation, honor in battle. Watch." As if responding to Barnes' prediction, Supreme Commander Voss opened a communication channel to the Imperial forces. His image appeared on the main screen, a proud figure in military dress, trying to project confidence despite the chaos behind him. "Emperor Vex," Voss declared, "I offer you one final chance to surrender. Your forces are outnumbered. Your allies are few. Submit now, and your people will be spared." Emperor Vex looked to Barnes, who nodded slightly. The Emperor stepped forward to respond. "Supreme Commander Voss, I appreciate your offer, but I'm afraid I must decline. You see, I have something you don't." "And what is that?" Emperor Vex smiled. "Humans," Voss laughed. "I've studied your new allies, Emperor. One primitive ship, 8 crew members from a backwater world. What could they possibly?" His words were cut off as every screen on his flagship suddenly went black. Then slowly text began appearing. In stark white letters. "Hello, Commander Voss. We've been waiting for you." Across the rebel fleet, the same message appeared on every ship's communication system. Panic spread as technical officers tried desperately to regain control of their networks. "Impossible," Voss whispered. "Our systems are isolated, encrypted." The text changed. "Nothing is isolated from humans who have had 3 weeks to prepare." Captain Barnes stepped into view of the transmission, and for the first time, Supreme Commander Voss saw the face of his true enemy. What he saw there made his blood freeze, not anger or hatred, but the cold, calculating expression of an apex. "Predator." "Supreme Commander," Barnes said calmly, "you wanted to know what one human ship could do against 2,000 rebel vessels. Would you like a demonstration?" The Millennium Draken, which had been docked at the Imperial station, suddenly activated. But instead of launching like a normal ship, it simply vanished. "Where did it go?" Voss demanded of his sensor operators. "Unknown. Sir, it just disappeared from all our screens." Then the attacks began. They started small rebel ships reporting minor system malfunctions, communication glitches, navigation errors. But within minutes, entire sections of the rebel fleet were losing power. Weapon systems were shutting down, and ships were reporting that their engines were no longer responding to commands. The Millennium Draken appeared briefly on sensors, moving impossibly fast between rebel vessels. Each time it appeared, another enemy ship went dark. It was as if the human vessel could phase in and out of existence at will. "What kind of technology is this?" Voss shouted. Barnes' voice came through the communication system, calm and terrifying. "Human technology, Commander." We've had a very long time to get good at destroying things. Lieutenant Davis appeared beside Barnes on the screen. Every system on your ships has been compromised. Your weapons are offline. Your engines are dead. Your life support systems are under our control. Tom's face joined them. We could kill every person on your fleet right now without firing a single shot, just by turning off your air recyclers. The true horror of the situation began to dawn on Supreme Commander Voss. These humans hadn't just defeated his fleet, they had taken complete control of it. 2,000 ships, millions of crew members, all helpless at the mercy of 8 humans from a world most of the galaxy had never heard of. But we're not going to do that, Barnes continued, because humans don't conquer through fear. We conquer through respect. The Millennium Draken reappeared, taking position directly in front of Voss's flagship. This close, the rebel commander could see the strange vessel clearly for the first time. It wasn't just a ship, it was a weapon of war, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. You have a choice, Commander, Barnes said. Surrender now, and your people live. Your rebellion ends, but your species survives. Continue fighting, and learn why humans spent 2 million years becoming the most dangerous predator in the universe. Supreme Commander Voss looked at his useless fleet, his terrified crew, and the impossible human ship that had effortlessly destroyed everything he had built. For the first time in his military career, he did the smart thing. I surrender. Emperor Vex watched in amazement as the greatest threat to his empire was neutralized without a single shot being fired. But as he looked at Captain Barnes and his crew, he realized something that would keep him awake for many nights. To come, the humans hadn't just saved his empire. They had demonstrated that they could destroy any civilization in the galaxy whenever they chose to do so. Any ship will do, the Emperor had said. He had gotten exactly what he asked for.